Welcome, everyone, to today's discussion, how to overcome cloud-native challenges in your digital transformation journey. Today, we're going to be looking into those challenges that you're going to face as you get started with or begin to scale your cloud-native infrastructure. Now, joining me today are four great speakers. We've got Brett Schroeder. He's head of the Office of CTO at SUSE. Brett, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to have the talk today.
Glad you're here. We also have Aravind G. He is the Associate Vice President of Cloud and Infrastructure Services Unit, the Transformation Practice at Infosys Limited. Aravind, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, and I'm very glad to be here.
Glad you're here as well. We third have Ramnath. I'm going to get this right. I promise it will, Ramnath. We tried this beforehand. Surya Prakash. Did I get that right?
Yes, that was awesome.
I try. I'm trying really hard. He's Vice President, Partner Ecosystems and Global Alliances at Infosys Limited. Ramnath, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. My pleasure.
And last but not least, Prasoon Das. He's Senior Principal Technology Architect, Cloud Native Platforms at Infosys. Prasoon, glad you're here as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Now, before we get started, I'd like each one of you just to spend 30 seconds or so and just talk about the work you do at your respective companies. And Brent, could I start with you?
Absolutely. In the Office of the CTO, we spend time studying emerging technologies and use cases and how that impacts our customers and in the industry as a whole, and helping put together the strategy for where the portfolio is going to go and how we address and adopt those use cases and technologies.
Awesome. Aravind.
Yes, I am Associate Vice President at Infosys Limited, based in Bangalore, India. And I head the Data Center Transformation Practice in Cloud and Infrastructure Services Unit.
Wonderful. Ramnath.
Yeah, I'm Ramanath Surya Prakash, Vice President, Partner Ecosystems and Global Alliances at Infosys. An important focus at Infosys as a global system integrator is to be able to partner with best-in-class companies like SUSE to be able to service our global Fortune Enterprise 2000 customers with the best-in-class technologies so that we, as a system integrator, can bring the best from what is available in the market and then to be able to provide the solutions to customers to enable the digital business, the infrastructure, application transformations. The another aspect in my portfolio is also to promote the open source ecosystem. And SUSE and Infosys are playing a key role in promoting this in the marketplace.
Wonderful. And again, last but not least, Prasoon.
Hi, I lead the cloud native platform in Infosys. We focuses on building and managing cloud native platforms for our global clients. And a large part of our work is centered around Kubernetes and a lot of the CNCF open source technologies.
Great. Glad to have all four of you. Lots of great perspectives here we're going to have on today's discussion here. Brent, I'm going to start with you, if I may. And I want to talk a little bit about industry adoption. But before we even talk about that, a little bit about this idea of cloud native and even what does it mean? Because I think there's some assumption here. We all know that lots of vendors use the same term and they sort of bend it their way to meet whatever marketing objectives they have and so on. And so maybe I'd start here with what's your definition of cloud native, and what are the business objectives that organizations are trying to accomplish by going cloud native?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a great question because I ask many of the customers I meet with, I ask them what their objective is in going cloud native. And, I think there's a misperception often in cloud native, many people equate to cloud. And that's not the case. Cloud native, I look at as really about a combination of the technologies and methodologies that allow companies to operate and deploy their applications in a specific way that really delivers much greater flexibility, agility, and portability. I can deploy an application where I need it to be deployed for the best customer experience when I want to deploy it or when I've got new capabilities available. And that's really how I net out, the cloud native aspects. And so why do companies want to adopt cloud native? And it's companies don't want to adopt technologies just for technology's sake. really always comes down to a business objective. And those business objectives that I see from companies are, drive more efficiency in the organization, in how they operate, how they work with each other, how they can deliver applications, to get to market faster. We've gone through, a very turbulent event just a few years ago that I think was really a driver of why cloud native. Right? Overnight, in 2020, companies needed to pivot business models and how they met their customers. And if you were built on a slow-moving legacy monolithic architecture, you really got left behind. And those companies that had already started positioning themselves in an agile manner, being able to deliver quickly, being able to deliver incrementally, really thrived in that environment. And I think companies have recognized that and are on that journey now of, how can they become more flexible, answer business problems, customer experience needs in a faster manner. And I think that's really what's driving cloud native today.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish to add here. So, cloud native technologies adoption is on the huge increase in our customer ecosystem. It is about cost efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and simplification. So, today, the customers have had their applications and stacks spread across many data centers, many cloud platforms. So it's about cloud native is about making it simple for the developers to develop applications without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. And that's where the container as a service is being taking more prominence in the market, and cloud native technologies can help to develop applications where it is more efficient, be able to live and shift that to any other location, so that to demystify where the software where the application, where the stack is placed, and to make the business very agile in developing applications, rolling out the most innovation that is required for customer experience in a very rapid way to most efficiently.
Decoupling it from the underlying infrastructure, be it private cloud or a public cloud, and ability to deploy it, bring the portability, and bring the agility, like I can scale it up and down. And one of the key thing that I see from an requirement, right, it should be really architected for failure. The failure in the underlying infrastructure should not affect a cloud native application. That cloud native application should be decoupled from that failure, and it should be agile to scale up and down and portable across the platforms. I think these are the key characteristics of building a cloud native platform and deploying the cloud native applications.
So, Prasoon, let me stay with you for a moment here. When organizations are trying to either get started being a cloud native, building cloud native applications, or they're trying to do the scaling, which I love that you brought up because I think that's really important. What are some of the issues? What are the common issues that they run into when they're either, again, starting out or scaling their cloud native applications?
So, one thing is the learning curve that is associated with it. If you architected the application for a traditional way, where you want to run the application on one or two instances, right? And you have not decoupled it from the data it is accessing, whether your front layer can scale up and then connect back to your data. So the application architecture is very important. There is a learning curve associated with it to build a correct application architecture. And then there is a learning curve associated with building the cloud native platform, which will host those applications. You have other facet of it, security, observability. Those should also fit into your cloud native environment and give you a correct environment to deploy the application. So I would say the learning curve, the taking care of the security, observability, other enterprise tooling that is associated with it, these are the challenges that customer faces.
I think to add to that, there's the organizational aspect in that to the point of the learning curve. There's a learning curve of every organization, and do organizations really have a common understanding of roles and responsibilities and expectations between groups and across the enterprise. There's everybody, coming into it with the same perspective. What is the developer's responsibilities? What is the operations team's responsibility? How does the CISO's organization participate in the development so that I got security in lockstep with the infrastructure? That's a really big part of it. And the companies that don't kind of have that mentality and approach of this is everybody's project, I think those are the ones that stumble because they don't have a common set of expectations, and then missed set expectations leads to gaps and fumbles along the way.
Yeah. So the enterprises today have an average of 2.3 cloud in any company. There's multiple cloud options and applications, and the challenge is in how to knit in the digital continuity of an enterprise. So the container technology definitely helps us to actually simplify that. The cloud native technology development helps to demystify that, and in an effect addresses those challenges.
That's actually where I wanted to go next as well. Maybe we could dive a little bit deeper into that, Ramnath. I appreciate that. Brett, maybe I could start with you, and maybe Ramnath, you could comment as well. But let's talk a little bit more. What is the strategy for addressing these? Is it as simple as just utilizing one technology, containers as a service? What is the strategy that organizations should be thinking about for addressing these issues with trying to either again go to or scale cloud native?
There's probably two or three items to hone in on, but one that I often start with and really see as a common thread is, do you have a central team that is really kind of driving the direction of the technology and how to use the technology? It's a term that's become very popular the last couple of years. And we recognize it very early on, is that of platform engineering. And that is a group that's kind of responsible for creating that development portal, creating common services that are leveraged across teams. Because one of the, if I go back to the challenge and the organizational challenges and why this is really such a critical aspect of success, is that if I just take Kubernetes and the Kubernetes ecosystem and hand it to 2,000 developers, I'm going to get 2,000 methodologies, which is not going to be successful. And I see companies all the time stumbling over this, where they've put a lot of responsibility in the developers' hands, which theoretically sounds good, but leads to this disjointed implementation. And it's really not what developers want to do. Developers don't want to be programming infrastructure and ecosystems. Developers want to be programming business solutions. So the success is, how do you create the set of roles so the developers can focus on what developers want to do, creating business results, and operations teams can focus on providing, and a platform engineering team can focus on providing a common set of services that really allow organizations to scale. So now my security is implemented in a common way. I can monitor the deployment locations in a common way. I've got a common methodology for how I choose which of the 2.3 clouds that I have and which goes on-prem and which should go in the cloud. A common methodology for managing cost, which is really a growing concern that people have, right? Is this sounds good, sounds good on the surface, and at the end of the quarter I get the bill, and there's a little bit of sticker shock. Can you optimize and manage the cost on where you put it? So a good practice there is, by providing those common services, you can continually adapt the implementation, to the business needs and the organization, and really help drive scale in that manner. So I think that's really one of the core aspects. And after that, the technologies, you look at the technologies that you need to help fill in those gaps, whether it's the security tools, whether it's observability, definitely something that's been a challenge in a very distributed ecosystem that cloud native brings, how do you manage that? It becomes almost impossible for a human to see where everything's at and what's going on. So adopting observability tools that can provide that holistic view and can really help with root cause analysis and honing in on where the hotspots are, helping gather cost and utilization information, et cetera, some of the key factors in helping grow and scale in a business friendly manner.
Yeah. So one of the strategies we have adopted at Infosys is to provide this to our global customers as a managed service, wherein we will manage the and also steer the automation, provisioning, compliance, audit, OS level virtualization, multiple Linux areas. So, in that way, we have been able to manage this very holistically and simplify the technical jargon for them so that they can purely focus on the business. Arvind and Prasun, you can add your points.
So I think that is where we put the container as a service. So the container as a service gives you a ready-to-consume platform from your platform engineering group, where you have it already secured, hardened, integrated with storage solution, network solution. You have all the tooling that developer team need to deploy the applications, and you get a ready-to-consume platform. So, our focus has been simplify things for the developer so that developer can focus on writing the business logic, right? Designing their presentation layer, writing the business logic, making sure that, they have all the things that is required to build a scalable data layer. And they only focus on writing the applications that will be deployed on this platform.
I think this comes back to one of the points that was mentioned earlier on, and I forget who mentioned it, is the skill set. It's a fast-moving technology, always coming with new sets of capabilities and best practices and learnings. And by leveraging an organization or a team that can focus on those changes, on those skill sets, et cetera, it lets the organization draft on that. So I think this is a great point. And coming back to this platform as a service notion or a CaaS platform, is that it alleviates much of the learning from the rest of the organization. So each team in the organization can focus on what they do best and not having to keep up with the dynamics and changes that are going on at such a high rate.
Yeah, I just want to add here the container as a service is an interesting concept. It's positioned between the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So it provides container as a service, provides more control than platform as a service without the complexity of infrastructure as a service.
I'm glad you guys actually defined containers as a service, because a lot of the conversation we had prior to this could just apply to containers. So it's really nice to bring that idea of that this is a platform, it's a consumable, ready, it's already secure, hardened, and it bridges some of those gaps, Ramanath. And I'd like to actually stay with you, if I may. I'm wondering about some of the people that are watching, maybe just thinking about, like, for example, Brent mentioned Kubernetes, and they're going, okay, so it's just you're delivering me a container. But we know that there's a bunch of other emerging trends that are happening in the realm of containers as a service, serverless computing, edge computing, integrating artificial intelligence. Could you just talk about some of those emerging trends? And anybody else that wants to pipe in as well afterwards, it'd be great. Just talk about so that the audience understands what we're talking about is not just, hey, we're going to give you a container, thumbs up. And there's a bit more that we're talking about here that is really being delivered to the organization as well.
Pretty much the container as a service, if you look at the industry today, the microservices architecture has been there for some time. DevOps practices have been there for some time. Security and compliance has always been important to an enterprise. Hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategies have come in recently, but they are taking the momentum. So if you really look at the trends, AI and machine learning or edge computing, focus on the edge computing and enhanced developer experience, which both Brent and Prasun pretty much talked about, container as a service has emerged as a game-changing technology in these. And these would be pretty much the key trends, right, or emerging trends in this. If you have to really count some of these, increased adoption in microservice architecture has picked the pace now. Integration with the DevOps practices, which Brent and Prasoon talked about. Security and compliance features, emphasis on that. Multi-cloud strategies, AI and machine learning, yeah, and edge computing and enhanced developer experience are some of them that are coming together with CaaS. And the future of CaaS looks bright, heralding a new era of cloud computing that is more adaptable, innovative, and accessible than ever before.
So let's recap on what is container as a service. It helps the customer, the businesses to manage, deploy, and scale containerized applications, which will blend agility, security, cost efficiency in a multi-cloud environment. Now, there are four trends that we are seeing in terms of the container aspects. Now, one, there's a rise of serverless containers, wherein developers can write the code without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. That's the first point. Second, now everybody is discussing about generative AI. Now, containers are now playing very key role here. So there's a GPU based compute for AI and ML workloads using the container as a service platforms. Then we are also having the ARM based compute adoption so that we can do a lot more compute where it is most cost efficient. That aspect is being possible by the hybrid cloud approach, how we design the environment during the using the containers. The third is the security aspect where we worked on the vulnerability through scanning and isolation, access control through role-based access control, compliance management, and also any misconfigurations that are done. So all of these are handled. This is the trend that's happening now. And the last is a hybrid and multi-cloud deployment. Sometimes what happens when you're doing huge amount of compute and then the storage aspects, so one needs to become pretty much clever on what needs to be executed in which location for the most cost advantage. And for when it comes to generative AI, how we do the training and inference. So where do we do the training, where do we do the inference, and where do we do the broadcast? So that requires a good setup, and this is how we are able to use this containers in a very intelligent way too. This is what is happening in the current trends to leverage this for really maximum advantage.
In addition to the AIML workload, I just like to add, two trends that we are seeing. One is the increased adoption of Kubernetes operator to run many of this service, right? Say database, CI/CD pipeline, everything where you have a validated catalog of Kubernetes operators that developer team can readily consume, and then deploy database using it, deploy MSHQ using it, deploy CI/CD pipeline using it. So this is one growing trend we are seeing where a lot of services are getting deployed using the Kubernetes operator. And the second thing that I would like to mention is Kubernetes virtualization, where we are looking at Kubernetes as an alternative hypervisor platform and hosting the VM within the container. And in the current market, trend, right, what we are observing, the change in the market dynamics, this has become quite an interesting use case where customers are not ready to containerize the application right now, maybe 2 years down the line, but they want an alternative solution. So we are putting the VM inside the container using the Kubernetes virtualization. So I would say the increased use of Kubernetes operator and the Kubernetes virtualization are the two trends that I'm seeing in my global clients.
Add to that, actually, I'll echo the last point on the virtualization. Is there's a lot of dynamics in the industry, and I think today many people create two islands, right? I've got my traditional virtual infrastructure and my virtual machines, and that's one island, and I've got a whole management paradigm for those. And then I've got my Kubernetes or my cloud native environment. I've got a management paradigm for those. And I think this is a great inflection point opportunity for companies to take a cloud native first approach to everything, right? So whether I've got containerized applications or I've got virtualized applications, being able to bring those onto a common infrastructure and manage those with a common methodology is a great game changer from an efficiency and oversight standpoint. And so really helping to drive down cost and improve organizational efficiency. A second aspect, and I've touched a little bit upon it, but I think it is very fundamentally important as far as a new set of capabilities or evolving set of capabilities in observability. Uh, as the adoption grows and people move from departments to multiple departments to the entire enterprise running cloud native applications, where are my resources being used? Where are the bottlenecks? If I've got an application of hundreds of services and the end user experience is degrading, where is the issue originating from? And like I say, looking at that and trying to find that, uh, with a human just looking through logs is looking for that needle in a haystack. And observability technology is moving so quickly that now we can pinpoint that down to the second that some configuration change or some technologies was introduced into the ecosystem that is having a cascading effect to impacting end user experience. And so that observability. The other aspect that observability is really coming into play, talk about Gen AI and adopting AI into a cloud native environment. And the big concern that companies are going to start to run into really quickly is this infrastructure, AI infrastructure and AI services are very expensive. And so am I utilizing the services that I'm subscribing to or the infrastructure that I've bought? Am I using it optimally in the right place to get the most efficient use out of that and maximize the capacity utilization out of the Gen AI resources? And I think that's something that is really going to be valuable to enterprises as we go forward.
Seems like all of you have a lot to say about the emerging technologies. It's actually really good, and it's encouraging that there's that much to talk about as opposed to trying to move to something that's a dead technology. This is obviously, if you've got a long future ahead of us. I'm wondering, though, we've talked a lot about this. I'm going to say sort of in concept or academically, or the promise of, and the kind of in those terms. And maybe Aravind, could I come to you, because maybe could you elaborate on like a real world case study of a customer that actually used containers as a service and it significantly improved their, like we've talked about, operational efficiency and reduced costs, and something you could actually point to that where that's actually happened?
We had for a leading German automaker, the world-class automaker. We had an opportunity to modernize their IT infrastructure with the pay-as-you-go container platform. In fact, this customer, outpaces both in the terms of complexity and scale, going globally across all the regions, and almost 2,000 customers globally who are going to pay as they go or as they consume. So this container platform becomes very important for them in on-demand provisioning. So if I really have to break this into three topics of how we went about doing that, number one, in terms of scale and volumetric, it has crossed 1,000 nodes with 120 plus clusters, with the global reach crossing all the regions in EMEA, NAFTA, and APAC regions, 5 global data centers, 12 plants, manufacturing operations worldwide, and 40 plus applications. The second aspect of how we went about the solution in this was on-demand provisioning for flexible and efficient resource allocation, and a very cost-effective pricing model based on the usage, because that is what customer wanted, and because they were so much spread across different regions, the solution had to be tailored for them. Some of them needed dedicated solution, and some the shared Kubernetes clusters. This was all pre-configured and optimized for rapid deployment. Sorry about that. This was optimized for rapid deployment and ready to consume platform. with a built-in security and observability and add-on services. Now, what was the benefit and value prop for the end customer? Flat 30% reduced total cost of operations. Now, this really gives a scale and breadth of how complex this was deployed. Probably Prasoon can add some more on the architecture part of it, on the complexity.
Sure. Thanks, Arvind, for that. The first thing I would like to mention that Infosys and SUSE collaborated on this, and the Kubernetes cluster that we are talking about, we deployed the RKE2, the next generation Rancher Kubernetes cluster on top of it, and it is, of course, globally managed by the Rancher multi-cluster management solution. To take care of this, scale of this platform, we introduced a concept called cluster as code, where every cluster, when it is ordered through the ITSM tools, is maintained as a code into the GitHub. So there is no documentation that we create there. If someone has to manage the cluster, see what is there in the cluster, they just need to look into the Git branch of that cluster. And what we did along with the Rancher and RKE2, we complemented with a container registry solution, open source solution, Harvard. So we deployed that across the globe in a fault redundant mode. Also for the logging solution, we used open source Loki, which proved to be a very scalable solutions. And so this is how we took the Rancher and Arcade solution from the SUSE and then integrated with the multiple open source technologies, the industry leading open source technologies, and give a platform which is ready to consume, secure, hardened. What I mentioned as a definition of CaaS. And then take the inspiration from that line, right? We just don't provide a container. We started giving them the PostgreSQL cluster. With one of our another partner, we deployed the Kubernetes operator for PostgreSQL, so the customer can order a PostgreSQL cluster and then they can get it. And they wanted the deployment tools, so we choose another open source tools like Argo City to provide that. Right. And as I already mentioned, we provided logging as a service for their applications using Loki. So I think this is a great real-time case studies. And one thing I must add here, we talked about a lot of this steep learning curve. I was personally impressed with the simplicity that RKE2 bring in. And, I mentioned in every forum that RKE2 is probably the only Kubernetes cluster which can be up by just downloading a package and then, systemctl start RKE2 server, right? It requires very minimum configuration. It actually simplifies the Kubernetes deployment to a large extent. And, thank you, SUSE team. It's an open source technology. We have also contributed, identified bugs, issues, work with the SUSE on, their GitHub pages to threads. And we also have a, managed service provider relationship with them. But yeah, thanks SUSE and Rancher for the great product, the simplicity that it brought to it, the multi-cluster management, features that Rancher brings with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the recognition on that. It's an area we definitely strive to excel in, to make you guys as productive as possible.
Absolutely. That was a great partnership.
That actually brings up a really good topic that I want to kind of sum everything up here today, is just talking about this idea of the partnership. We saw Prasoon start by talking about the idea that it's not just a container, it's a lot more than that. And maybe Ramnath, maybe I could go to you and you could just talk about how the partnership between your two organizations actually helps customers accelerate this digital transformation, avoid the challenges we've talked about, all that kind of thing. Could you talk a little bit about the partnership?
Yeah, at Infosys, we believe on the concept of better together. So how we can have the concept of win, win, and win. How can we make our end customer win by the synergistic congruence of Infosys as a global system integrator and solution provider, and SUSE and other relevant associated technologies as product companies to blend the best of breed and to provide to the most optimal solutions to our end customers, so that we demystify the technology for them so that they can actually focus on delivering business outcomes. So this is what we enable through partner ecosystems, through global partnerships. And SUSE has been a great partner with Infosys, and they have been very good in the marketplace to actually promote the open source journey and communities. And Infosys is very active in the open source community, and Infosys and SUSE are working together to take on some of these large OEMs, global OEMs that are being brought about. And we are planning to see how we can replicate this solution to other global OEMs as we move forward.
Yeah, I'll add more to that. Having a partnership with Infosys, our focus is on capturing and creating an enterprise-ready solution of open source technologies. Open source is absolutely fantastic in the collaboration of the entire industry. And being able to leverage diversity and the experiences and kind of bring that together in an open manner that allows open integration, as I mentioned. Being able to use other technologies and bring them into the Rancher solution to complete or customize and optimize it for a specific case. And then Infosys kind of brings to our platform the subject matter expertise, right? From an industry, from a Kubernetes expertise, operations expertise, and really helps a company scale up and adopt the technology and focus on delivering the business results that they want to do. So, it's the partnership is just superb in how it's executing and the value that we mutually bring to our joint customer.
So I would like to reiterate our strong synergy in terms of our shared commitment to the open source. So Infosys is a platinum member of CNCF and, actively contribute to the ecosystem. And, I see the same thing with the SUSE. The entire architecture solution is up in the GitHub. We can also look into the code and see how it is, behaving, why it is behaving. So that has been a great game changer for the large engagement that I have mentioned. It allows us to integrate other open source technologies. At the same time, it allows us to understand, the way RK2 works or Rancher works by even looking into the codes, right? And there is no difference between a open source Rancher and the other one. So I think SUSE does not believe in creating those barriers, right? And I think we are happy to share a strong shared commitment to open source.
Wonderful. Glad that's a really great answer. I'm glad it came from a couple of you that actually demonstrates the partnership as well. So that you did it a wonderful way of doing that. And obviously, we're kind of out of time, I think, at this point for today. Do want to thank Brent, Aravind, Ramanath, and Prasoon for sharing their expertise on today's topic. For those of you watching, if you want to get more information, you can use the QR code that is being displayed on the screen and just take a picture of that. Visit the website therein. And this is going to go ahead and conclude today's discussion. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.